I think the majority has standards that are both too high and too low. On one hand, yes, some women's standards are often ridiculously high. The superficial ones, that is, height, paycheck, and insanely petty random things that he should or shouldn't do in order to not give her the ick. These demands are sometimes so ridiculous and petty that they make me dizzy. On the other hand, I'm constantly taken aback by how much many women are willing to tolerate. Their standards for the moral character of men are so often the lowest of the low to non-existent, it's embarrassing. Yet these same women are completely perplexed when they suffer the consequences of this. It makes me mad because I genuinely want better for women as a woman myself in a sense that matters, to be spiritually, mentally, and emotionally healthy. Life is filled with women's stories and requests for advice after messing up their lives, wasting time with losers, perverts, idiots, and narcissists. Men who obviously don't love and respect them, despite the outward arrogance and high standards. Often, those who talk nonstop about men's height and status and who go on cringeworthy rants about all the stuff they demand from men because they're the prize get used in the most embarrassing ways by the most obvious playboys and losers. In my opinion, women should raise their standards, but different ones, standards for virtue. Story 1. I think most people need to start being honest with themselves regarding standards. Most people are not capable of holding a long-term relationship with the people that fit their standards. Story 2. I have literally heard from a friend once, "Yeah, he's a piece of shit and I know he's cheating on me, but where am I going to find another 6'4" guy?" I don't think there's a disconnect between what you call high and low standards. Considering that 12% of men are taller than 6 feet, there simply aren't enough tall guys for every woman who wants one. By definition, we're dealing with a beggars can't be choosers situation. Hence my friend's attitude. Usually, when the men who physically attract you aren't treating you the way you expect, you negotiate your standards. Sometimes appearance and wealth win, and sometimes character and morals do. Story 3. I once overheard two girls talking. One of the girls was talking about her boyfriend. After a few minutes, I was thinking, why is she dating a guy who is clearly a sociopath? Then the other girl said, he is so gorgeous. And the girl lit up like a Christmas tree and said, I know, isn't he? It was the moment in my life when I realized I will never understand women. Story 4. Women claim they are most attracted to men's character and personality. They could raise their standards by actually prioritizing what they say is most important. Story 5. I think you can determine to raise or lower standards based on a mirror test. You can realistically go after high-value men if you are objectively in their league. I'm sure a lot of us have seen clips of a woman listing some absurd requirements. 6 feet tall, 200,000 salary, six-pack, nice car, must pay for everything. But then comparatively the woman is a 5, has a dead-end job, room temperature intelligence, or some other clear negative qualities. In what world would the unicorn she's after be interested in her? A good rule of thumb would be to adjust your expectations to be with someone you would consider equal to yourself. If you want to aim higher, then work on improving yourself. Obviously, there can be exceptions, but it's a good rule of thumb. You still see a lot of women wasting time looking for a prince when they aren't a princess. Story 6. I think it would do women a lot of good to stop talking about standards and start talking about expectations. It seems like a subtle difference, but it's important. If you talk about standards, then it implies that a man can be far above standard in some things, and it implies that he has some sort of objective value among women for being high in whatever standard it is. For example, a man who makes a lot of money or is very tall or whatever. This idea that he's somehow extra valuable based on exceeding standards in these regards is why women end up tolerating so much negative behavior from him. Other women would like him for his height, so therefore you have to accept his uncalled for insults because it balances out, right? The idea of standards is also a self-esteem trap. Women with low self-esteem say, I guess I should have low standards because I'm not good enough to compete for the higher quality men. And relatedly, women who keep attracting men who are below standard will then conclude that they themselves must be below standard because they can't attract a better man. Your own expectations and preferences are all that matter for your own relationship. Whether or not other women would agree with those or value the same man shouldn't be part of the equation. If a man isn't meeting expectations for something that's important to you, That should be what you are considering against what you personally value about him. This idea of standardized grading of men is just another contributing factor to the eternal problem humans have always faced in making good matches. Each woman should raise and lower her own expectations according to what's important to her personally, and then stick to those. Story 7. I can understand a woman not wanting to be taller, but eliminating someone if they're not 6 feet is wild to me. Height, hair color, and eye color all have nothing to do with culture or personality. Any hard nose based on that is unreasonable. Story 8. I think you nailed it entirely in this post. Lower the superficial ones, raise the ones related to character. Many of the superficial ones can be worked on and encouraged. Ultimately, they make their choices and get the results they chose despite obvious red flags. I went from a romantically unsuccessful man in my youth to a much more romantically successful man by my mid-20s by making substantial changes to my superficial characteristics. Style, fitness, confidence, and money changed my world. I'm married and in my 30s now, but I have on multiple occasions had past female friends, women I've known for well over 15 years, tell me how they really thought they would end up with someone like me. They seem to have completely forgotten that they had zero interest in me when I was single. Story 9. If you evaluate the standard characteristics, you can identify some common desires that are misplaced. Women often struggle in filtering men, and feminism hasn't helped them. Ultimately, I've seen women trying to create standards that indicate masculinity, but they fail because they don't fully understand what it is. They might see a callous jerk and mistake combativeness for confidence. This is one of the big reasons why the idea of just be clean fails too. Women say they want a clean-cut man, but they don't want a clean-cut pushover. That's why you'll see them turning down generally mellow clean-cut guys for the dirtier, more combative ones. They will absolutely make trade-offs that go against everything they say. I've noticed this especially with my friends who didn't have a father figure. Their dating experiences were vastly different from mine, and they suffered tremendously for it. But I had a dad, a really good one, and my dating experiences are generally good. If you have daughters, be a good dad. Story 10. Lower the height standard. Requiring a man to be 4 inches taller than you is ridiculous. On the other hand, women should not date men who have been abusive or cheated, no matter how good-looking they are. Story 11. A woman I know put it well. It's likely that a lot of guys are going to give you trouble, so you might as well choose one that's fun and attractive. I think guys feel the same way. The shy guy that feels no one likes them and is short and poor isn't suddenly going to gain confidence when you're with them. So you have to deal with the normal stuff plus whatever their insecurities are. Remember when Jonah Hill was telling his girlfriend not to be an influencer? How much would it have been difficult to deal with that if he wasn't rich? Story 12. I'll tell you one that drives me bonkers. Must not be a loser that doesn't have a car. I'm blind, which means I can't drive. Does that make me a loser? Story 13. I think since we no longer live in a society where you have to be in a relationship or get married, people should just find someone who makes them happy. All this standards talk makes it feel like a job application. Story 14. Most women need to dramatically raise their standards on how they're treated. If I could punch a man in the face every time I hear some disrespectful nonsense directed at a woman, my hands would never heal. Stop letting rude people treat you like that. Lower standards on the physical traits, specifically the ones we don't control like height and hair. Story 15. I think that women are fine with their standards, to be honest. Where I think they suffer is in understanding where they are. I know women who think and act like they are very attractive. I know I am okay, but my personality needs improvement, and I have to work on that. I also do not engage in the flashy lifestyle, spending lots of money on social media, which some girls love. That is my decision, and I know it affects my desirability, so what I look for in a partner has to adjust accordingly. But there are girls out there who are overweight, without jobs, with unattractive tattoos, who smoke, and they have high expectations and a long list of demands. Story 16. Standards are good for everyone involved, and if someone has unreasonable expectations, then that's just a good sign you don't need to waste your time on them. Story 17. Whichever ones they want. People are free to make their own choices. They are free to decide that having no partner is better than having a partner who does not match their qualifications or not, if that is what they want. Story 18. Women should have lower standards in areas where I am lacking and higher standards in areas where I excel. That's going to be pretty much every answer. Story 19. They need to get better at spotting a creep. I can do it, most of the time it's obvious. I can't tell you how many times one of my female friends is dating a complete pile of garbage and all of her friends tell her he's a complete pile of garbage. But they never listen and are surprised that he's a huge pile of garbage. Also, a lot of them need to lower their physical standards a little. Not a lot, but when an average-looking woman won't date a guy who's not movie star handsome and then wonders why she's single, it's hard to have sympathy for her. Men do this as well, but at least as far as the physical standards part, men seem to have looser standards. Story 20. Women should raise their standards when it comes to requiring some degree of emotional commitment or investment before sex. Women should lower their standards to the level of the men they can get to commit to them. If they want to have the results most women say they want. Story 21. It's the Beauty and the Beast story. And I believe a lot of women who have been raised with a very gendered education think they need to save the beast. I once dated a racist woman. I thought I was going to save her from it. She just cheated on me and said she would date only people of her nation and religion. I guess I was the beauty as well, or it just happens to guys alike. Story 22. You're looking at it wrong. Women with low standards are in relationships and tolerating the nonsense. Women with high standards are single and looking for someone who fits the bill, but they are extremely rare. Story 23. I would just focus on yourself and try your best to connect with individual women. This mentality is just kind of silly. What a person wants is their business, whether they get it or not is on them, obviously. If there is a particular woman you know who has high standards that you don't fit, just move on. Who cares about that person anyway? Story 24. When women screen men, they're often openly looking at height, finances, and humor. When they complain about their exes, they never say, "He was too short, rich, serious." They seem to filter with a completely different lens than they want in a long-term partner. Just my 2 cents. Story 25. Unpopular opinion. People have high standards for those they are not attracted to. They are perfectly willing to drop these standards for those who sexually arouse them intensely. Story 26. Which women? There are 4 billion of them. I have 2 cats, and they both have very different wants and needs. Raise your own standards and try to get to know someone as a person. Story 27. Women should not have a standard when it comes to height. It is fine to have a preference, but saying a guy needs to be at a certain height or taller is unreasonable. Women should gain a better understanding of the kind of income men in the age range they are considering typically earn, as some salary expectations appear to be unrealistic. Women should also be more discerning in evaluating their partners. If he has 3 other children with different women, perhaps avoid unprotected intimacy with him. Story 28. Who cares? You cannot change what people want. Do not even pretend it is an option. I think everyone should do whatever they want and deal with the benefits or consequences of those choices. Story 29. You nailed it. Lower standards about looks, height, and money. Higher ones about moral integrity. Concrete example. Imagine if women collectively decided not to date men with a violent past or those who are ex-convicts. It would be challenging for the reformed and falsely accused ones, of course, but still. Abuse rates would go down significantly and, in the long run, there would be fewer criminal men. Story 30. From a serious perspective, the idea of standards has always been meant to be a guide, just enough to allow you to narrow down the type of person you're interested in, but at some point the idea got out of hand. You should only have as many standards as you are willing to fulfill yourself. I understand viewing yourself as the prize, but if your partner is not a prize also, you are just playing a game no one can win. For me, I try to improve my physical, emotional, and spiritual energy levels, so I have a standard on what level I am willing to date a woman in these areas, but I know that doesn't make a whole person, and I'm willing to work on other issues. The 6-foot, 6-figure, 6 inches plus rule for women is not a standard. It's just a way of narrowing down what you think would be attractive. The difference between the two is that standards allow for growth and a willingness to compromise, while aiming for an attractive level sets a boundary that you are not willing to compromise on and eliminates people who would be willing to change for you. You should never set standards you are not willing to meet yourself. If you really want the 6 rule as a standard, you need to be willing to be with someone who expects the same from you. For example, if a man desires someone with a 34D bust, 24-inch waist, and 50-inch hips, and you don't match, don't be surprised when he doesn't want you. Story 31. I am a tallish guy at 6'1", but I do wish women would relax their height requirements a bit. The measure of greatness is not found upon a yardstick. There are plenty of great short guys out there. Story 32. I think the standard that confused me the most was wanting a high earner but not being able to adjust to the lack of free time that being a high earner comes with. Story 33. Which standards do you think women should raise and which lower in dating? I think that's far too general a question to generalize an answer. I've seen many women with standards way too low who will date anyone, and likewise way too high who would never even date someone perfect and always want more. And, of course, lots in between, with mixed too high and too low standards coming from the same woman, and which are too high versus too low. That's also all over the map and varies greatly from woman to woman. Maybe there's enough out there to draw some statistical inferences, but more generally, it's quite varied. Story 34. The trend of girls focusing on their boyfriend's wallet and those who will abandon their careers to become stay-at-home partners is concerning. It's not about calling women gold diggers, an unfair term, but highlighting how vulnerable this makes them. Relying too much on a man they just met can make it difficult to leave if he turns out to be abusive or unfaithful. What if he loses his job? What if he starts to control you with his money? What if he stops giving you money? It's too dangerous to think that way, and I hope younger women will realize this before it's too late. Ironically, I've met many wealthy but unpleasant men and poor yet kind ones.